Hello, this is Dion Hinchcliffe, a VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research for Future of Work and CIO topics.
And I'm Doug Henschen, VP and Principal Analyst covering Data to Decisions, and we're your co-hosts for episode 47 of CRTV.
And we're here to talk about the latest news, trends, and innovations in enterprise tech, and of course, the biggest event in the tech probably this year, AWS ReInvent.
We'll have our producer Hannah Hock on what's new and noteworthy at Constellation Research. And then after the news, we'll share Dion's interview with SuperNova Award winners Stace W of Confluence Health, a winner in the Future of Work Employee Experience category of the SuperNova Awards.
And then we'll revisit our Constellation Enterprise event for highlights from Doug's great panel on the ESG imperative. But first, let's get to the news.
Last week it was AWS reInvent, the biggest event in tech of the year, 50,000 attendees, lots of buzz, big success, big scale. And we saw what I thought was a maturing AWS, fewer breakthroughs into new areas, more polish and filling in of the existing portfolio. So deeper instead of broader. We had some, as analysts, we had the Analyst Summit some time with Adam Selipsky, and he talked about having an apps team now reporting to him, and that they'll be moving up the stack a bit. And one sign of that was a new supply chain analytics app built with their data lake technology. They also are harnessing that data lake pattern for Amazon Omics, a healthcare a data lake, and also a security lake. Similarly, gathering up all the security information and providing recommendations and insights. So building on that lake pattern, but it'll be interesting to see, how far up Amazon moves into the apps, into enterprise apps. I don't think this wasn't a transactional supply chain app, more like recommendations and insights. So not going to make any concerns among ERP vendors, for example, in supply chain, but clearly they've got their eyes on moving up the stack.
Yeah, no question about it, Doug. Although it was interesting, they did announce a product called AWS Supply Chain, and so that that I think puts some writing on the wall that they need to get away from the commodity business that they're in. And it was interesting because I really attended reInvent. It was a fascinating event with jam-packed with news and lots of clues. I had my CIO antenna on trying to figure out where it's all going because there's lots of concerns given the economy, given the share of cloud spend going to hyperscalers like AWS and its consumption of the IT budget. There's real interest in cost containment. And so lots of clues dropped. They talked a lot about over-provisioning. The customers were over-provisioning and they need to be careful about that. And they provided additional sets of tools, in things like a DevOps Guru and some other offerings they have that will allow you to really ensure you're only buying or subscribing to what you actually need. It was interesting, but really the big message, overarching message, was they are the high performance leader in cloud, and by extension that also means they're inexpensive, because if their cost per CPU hour and their CPU hours do a whole lot is the best in the business, that means you should be able to, if cost is your most important concern, you can use that high performance to actually reduce your costs. At least that was what they kept saying around the edges. They never came out and say it. They did not address the CIO concerns head on, at least not publicly, around how are we going to keep our arms around this growing elephant that is our cloud spend, and given that we're not seeing the Moore's Law dividend being passed on. So that was one of the big takeaways that I had, Doug. What about you?
Yeah, and some of those chip announcements, for large models, for example, with Trainium and Inferentia chips. But when I talk to, some data science teams, they're kind of hesitant to dedicate to one infrastructure platform, dedicated purpose-built chips on any one cloud. So open question as to whether, data science teams will be necessarily embracing what can be proprietary chips. They want to be able to bring that data science to any cloud. There's Intel commodity sort of chips, GPUs that they can get on any cloud. I think a lot of companies want to see that cross-cloud portability. But really, I was at reInvent all about the data and analytics highlights. Amazon has gone down that purpose-built. They have a database engine for every need. And so they have Aurora for transactional, they have Redshift for analytical. But here we started to hear their zero ETL messaging, and that they're kind of bringing things together behind the scenes. So they have this new integration between Aurora and Redshift. They're basically taking the row updates in a change data capture, a low latency way, and extracting it and loading that into Redshift without ETL. You would have to transform that data once it's in Redshift to conform to your data warehouse, but it's a good step. A lot of companies might have made other choices. There's certainly more universal databases like Oracle where that sort of row into column happens automatically within the same database. But because Amazon has this purpose-built approach, I think it's an open question. We'll have to watch and see whether maybe Aurora eventually will do more of these activities that are now dedicated engines at Amazon. For example, they have a time series database, they have a JSON database, they have a separate analytical database in Redshift. It could be that Aurora at one point might add more capabilities, but we'll have to see whether they give a little on that. You have to have a purpose-built database for everything. Another big announcement from them was the Amazon Data Zone. This is basically a machine learning assisted data catalog, much like some of the data governance and metadata management capabilities you see on other clouds like Microsoft Purview and Google Dataplex. So really they're kind of responding in some of these areas. Another response to competitive moves was their clean rooms announcement. Snowflake, Databricks both have this sort of announcement. So they're not exactly pioneering with some of these data analytics announcement, filling holes, responding to competitive threats. That's the kind of pattern I saw.
Well, and it was really interesting. We've seen that one of the big concerns that IT has is data spreading out across the cloud. So there's this big diaspora, I've been calling it, data going out to all these different SaaS applications and hyperscaler cloud stacks. And CIOs are worried about losing control. So things like AWS data flow was really emphasized, 50 new connectors to say kind of bring some of that back home into your data lakes. And so I like that messaging is going to go over really well. And they spent quite a bit of time on that. But I thought, Doug, what was really interesting was the whole narrative about they'll give you the right tools for the job, that AWS is too complex, because that's a criticism that's coming. There's over 600 instance types alone. There's hundreds of services now available from AWS. And try to wire them all together into a working solution out of the box is something that's really beyond the average developer or architect at this point. So they had these themes about space exploration using the right tools for the job, or sea exploration, and be able to say, we get different results with different tools. We need all these databases. We need all of these types of instances and specialized hardware. And so they're trying to differentiate themselves with choice internally to Amazon. There's 600 instance types. There's 10 different databases. There's all kinds of compute hardware depending on your exact need. We can meet that. We have different approaches to AI, and so I thought they did a better job than they ever have of explaining the breadth, which I think is what's starting to really weigh. It's a very steep hill to climb to bring all these things together, and all of the cybersecurity and all of the enterprise best practices. That they're pitching that IT has to embody to have properly organized, properly running efficient systems. So overall, I thought that they did a better job of explaining themselves in terms of why they keep coming out with so many services and so quickly. And they had many new announcements all around this. So I thought that was good. But differentiation is now not just in high performance computing, which they've clearly made a big stake in numerous times, both at the Analyst Summit and at the main summit that we attended, Doug. But then they're also talking about you're going to have more choice and less than anywhere else, and we get your problems. So I liked some of that. So it was good in that I still think there's going to be now an increasing push for a next generation simplified stack. I think things like zero trust architecture, which I didn't hear about at all in the Analyst Summit or in the main reInvent, which is the number one priority for cybersecurity for CIOs right now, and it'll be mandatory in the federal government by 2024. That's hard in multi-cloud. It's not a solved problem. It's not straightforward. Yeah,
bingo on that simplification point. I think that's so important. Amazon got into this building, services that were kind of duplicating all the popular on-premises types of engines that were out there, an alternative to MySQL, an alternative to Postgres, so an alternative to Neo4j. They came out with all these because they wanted to make it easy for folks to move workloads that existed on premises into the cloud. But we've got so many cloud native companies now that are starting and only doing things in the cloud. So there is a call for greater simplification and solutions for the cloud that don't necessarily mimic solutions that were strictly on premise years ago. So I would like to see them come up with a database engine, for example, that is more of a multi-purpose generalist tool. So you don't have to every time you have to have another engine. It's data movement, it's security, it's privacy of that data. It's new data silos. So they really do need to integrate, and this zero ETL theme they came up with was a sign of that. Well, that's it for this week's news summary. Stay tuned for Dion's interview with the Next Gen Employee Experience winner of the SuperNova Awards, highlights from my ESG Imperative panel at Constellation's Connected Enterprise event. But first, let's hear from Hannah Hock on what's new and noteworthy at Constellation Research.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Hock with the Constellation marketing team, and I'm here to bring you a quick update of what's new at Constellation. For starters, we've opened the 2023 nominations for our AX100 and ESG 50 lists. The AX100 recognizes standout CXOs in the category of customer experience. ESG 150 highlights the companies making big waves to impact environmental and sustainability governance. We will be honoring our AX100 nominees during our 2023 Ambient Experience Conference held in March at the one and only Napa, California, so be sure to nominate and secure your spot at the Culinary Institute of America Wine Country. For all HR leaders, analyst Holger Mueller published a best practices report on how to succeed in complex payroll environments. The report, linked below, highlights payroll challenges, best practices, and a set of recommendations for HR leaders on maintaining a smooth and flawless PACS payroll. Next, our analyst Steve Wilson just published 2 blogs over the security of the FIDO Alliance. FIDO authentication enables password-only logins to be replaced with secure and fast login experiences across websites and apps. Steve discusses the security of FIDO, specifically with consumerization of cryptography and FIDO leading the way for a verifiable Internet of Things. Be sure to check out these reports and more on our website at constellationr.com. Last week, our analysts attended the 2022 AWS ReInvent conference and posted a plethora of real-time interviews and insights via our blog, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages. Take a look at those resources to fully understand the new technologies and updates coming out of AWS in the next 12 months. So what's coming up? On December 13th, we're hosting our monthly Client Analyst Exchange, where all our clients are welcome to join the call and ask our analysts and fellow CXOs questions about the market, industry trends, and any other business questions that come to mind. Finally, we will be announcing our 2022 Enterprise Awards, aka the best and worst of technology from the last 12 months, during CRTV episode 48, airing on December 21st at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So be sure to tune in for that episode to see if you made the list. Well, that's all I have for you this week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next episode.
In our homes and on our mobile devices. So Infor's developed a digital assistant, which is called Coleman. And we worked with them to deploy Coleman on personal devices. And in a mobile app, they're able to interact with this digital assistant. And while they're in transit to the storeroom or wherever they need to get to find a supply, they ask Coleman, where's this item located? And what used to take 15 minutes, or in some cases even a half an hour to find something, if it wasn't in the storeroom, they'd have to go and try to find it in another unit. They can speak with Coleman either through a voice interaction or a chat feature. And by the time they even step foot in the storeroom, they know exactly where to go, and it will be the most up-to-date information on where the supply is located. If they get there and find that the supply is out of stock, there's another skill, is what we call them in Coleman, that they can ask where else in the hospital is this item supplied or stocked, so they can get to that unit quickly and borrow it from them. They have a great deal of confidence in this process. It's proven to work. In just a few short months, they're loving it.
No, that's amazing. It's like Alexa, type capability meets the supply chain platform that you had meets the future of work. So tell us about the results. What did you encounter?
Yeah, so they specifically said that it's been less stress for them. They know where they need to be and where to go to get something. So the anxiety has gone down, which is great because, there's some high pressure situations that they can find themselves in, those stat CNAs. And the most important thing is improved patient care, getting those much needed supplies to the patient faster. Other results from more of a business standpoint was this was just so easy to implement and roll out because we're already familiar with artificial intelligence in our everyday lives and digital assistants. So getting this deployed and set up was a breeze. It inherits the same security features that the users have if they're sitting at a desktop. And the training was literally a single session of here's how you access Coleman and here's how you start interacting with Coleman. Just simple to roll out is what I'd say.
Well, I think the results in your submission speak for themselves. I think you said it had 90% faster supply chain processes, and you deployed it in less than 90 days. So I thought that was impressive as well. So,
yeah, the Infor team was great to work with, and and I just think that solutions like these that are something we're already familiar with that we use at home, it makes it a breeze to implement in the workplace.
Absolutely. Well, Stace, congrats again to you and Confluence Health. You guys were the winner of the SuperNova Award for Future Work Employee Experience for your solution. And thanks for sharing your story.
Well, we're here on an ESG panel. Part of E is the S, the social, which includes diversity, equity, and inclusion. And here we have our first manel. So apologies, but Montra Ellis of UKG had her last flight out of Dallas canceled last night. For Montra's part, she's with UKG. They do HR and workforce management software. And when I spoke to her, she talked about that software now supporting these goals of diversity, equity, inclusion. She talked about not only spotting glass ceilings, but glass structures. So not just upward movement, but lateral movement, and understanding the skills that people have, and having nudges and behavioral correction in the software to say, hey, have you considered this candidate that has the skills and experience you're looking for, even though maybe it's a male-dominated role typically, or there's a culture in the organization that may not be colorblind.
Sustainability is probably the number one topic that comes out with our employees and with our clients. But it's very important to be ahead of the game in that space if you want to attract the best talent. AI, about data, about measurements, this is absolutely key for us to be able to take action. So it starts from the top.
Encompassing both the E and the S.
Yes, encompassing both the E and the S. So once you have that, then everything basically becomes clear on the client perspective, because you're helping clients to do that, or an internal employee perspective. And I think this is absolutely key. These projects are really helping our clients to reduce their carbon footprint.
Hari, data centers consume as much energy as the entire state of Australia every year, and it's one of the fastest growing categories of energy consumption. What can we do about the carbon footprints of our data centers?
Sustainability is the number one challenge of our generation, and it will take all of us collectively to solve it. Right? We didn't get here by making one bad choice. We made 1,000 decisions, and along the way we made a bunch of poor ones, and that's what's got us here. And getting from here to where we can be sustainable is also one which will take thousands of very, very good decisions. We divide the broad problem into two parts. The first is energy efficiencies, and the second one is energy choices. Right? Let's talk about energy efficiency. Today, every generation of compute can promise even better energy efficiency built into it. In fact, in the latest Z program that we just launched, we can get about 70% more energy efficiency than the previous one or whatever else is available in the market. So this is an important element for us to think about. Across our entire infrastructure portfolio, we today have sustainability as our number one design driver, and it goes into building better products for us. Then we take a look at energy choices, right? And this is where it's important for us to think about moving away from fossil fuels fuels to power the technology appetite that we have. Every second, every decision that we make is now connected to technology, and that's only going to increase. And so we just need to simply adopt much better energy sources. So that collectively, those two dimensions, energy choices, energy efficiency, makes the difference.
By 2030, there'll be carbon pollution-free electricity on every Army installation. That's a huge deal that impacts everything. Now, when you're that bold and you want that much to change, you look at everything across the board. You look at if you're moving content to the cloud, how efficient is that? Because as they're looking, they're not just looking at scope one, their consumption, but also what they're causing. This makes them look at, if I'm moving to the cloud, is the container more efficient or is a service more efficient? How can I reduce that? Which most of you, if you're at a public company looking at ESG guidelines, you're probably asked, well, if you're in the cloud, that's scope 2, you don't have to care about that because Amazon or IBM or Google is worrying about that for you. Well, the federal government looks at that and cares about that because they know if they're just shifting it, it's not reducing it. And for the DoD especially, if we're spending energy on data centers or facilities or other things, that's shifted away from their actual mission. So every level goes into it. And so when we look at moving compute around, it's, of course, we have to hit the mission, we have to be secure, and we have to be sustainable as well.
Where we help with monitoring the performance of the ships, we have a few solutions out there. So one is a hull performance monitoring, one is a total fuel oil consumption monitoring, so where we monitor the ship's routes. We give advice to the ship's captain to take a certain route so that they avoid bad weather, and in that process they can save fuel. We advise better routes where they can take advantage of the currents or good weather to be more efficient. Bigger problem is not just routing, it's taking all the data available and then generating optimized recommendations for even what ship to next build, so that we don't have large ships sitting idle and waste fuel.
The right. There is no free pass, right? Green energy does not mean that you should be inefficient in any way, right? I mean, you still need to be efficient, and we live in a hybrid world, and that's the reality, right? There is always going to be some data that's generated in our laptops and in our phones. There's going to be data that's generated inside our own on-prem environments, and then there'll be cloud data, and then there is the movement of data between all of these. So when you look at sustainability, it needs to cover all of those frontiers. There is no free pass. The point, though, that I'm making is that when sustainability comes with economic advantage, it becomes a competitive advantage, right? So we see customers over and over making better decisions, because when they make better decisions in their data center, the bar for what needs to happen in the cloud becomes even higher. When they make better decisions with their compute environments, wherever they are located, the bar for how software uses it becomes higher. So this propels the innovation that's required for sustainability. We need to solve for sustainability as a design choice point, and that's not about just propping it over to the cloud and say, so long as they make better choices, we are okay. No, you have to force them to make better choices along the way.
But I think more and more our clients are asking us to look at the product design very early in the product strategy you're going to design for the next 2 or 3 years. And we are looking at that very, very carefully these days.
Well, that's a wrap on episode 47 of CRTV. Get set for our next episode coming up in 2 weeks.
That's right. Watch for co-hosts Holger Mueller and Liz Miller, who will bring you episode 48 of CRTV. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at CRTV_show, at ConstellationR.com, and on LinkedIn at hashtag CRTV show.
Thanks for watching and have a great week.
All right, I'm looking a little peaked there. Get the view. Hey, Dion, we gotta get consistent here with our less headroom. Can you tilt your? Oh, what is your camera 720 or? Okay, that's pretty consistent. You look nice and warm. I look pale, but I have the flu.
You look a little pale, yeah.
I know, I'm taking a week off.
You live rough lives here at Constellation Research. Huh?
Seriously, it's hard.
That's right. We'll get to that in the news. But this, following the news, we'll have. I just screwed up.
Okay. Get some bloopers.
I'll take it from here. So this episode, following the news, we'll have a wrap up from our producer. That's not right. I wrote the script wrong. Well, that's it for the. I need to go to bed. Highlights from my ESG Imperative panel and Constellation's Connected Enterprise event. You know, I just butchered that too. I'm just like having a great day here.
Well, you got us some good content, Doug. That is the real win here.
Oh, man.